Welcome to Movie Slice. Quick, fun recaps of your favorite movies. Sharp, funny, and to the point. Hit subscribe and get your perfect slice of cinema. The movie of In the Heart of the Machine starts in Sofia Central Prison, where the prisoners stand early in the morning, reciting the national anthem of Bulgaria, just like every day before they begin their daily routine. Among these people, we find our protagonist, whom everyone calls Buemi, and who has been imprisoned here since. Buemi tells us how hard life in prison is. He admits that the first few years are the hardest, but over time he managed to adapt to the point where he feels as if he was born inside the prison. Among the problems he faces is the security guard, Beksiki, whom he describes as a sadist, because his pleasure is to keep beating the prisoners with a wooden stick and send them to the prison clinic just for fun. Buemi and his fellow inmates work in a workshop belonging to a steel factory, and this is the place every prisoner wants to go because working there makes them feel like ordinary workers, and also helps them reduce their sentences a bit. After the work hours are over, everyone returns to their cells where they spend their time playing backgammon, smoking cigarettes, and one of them manages to get some alcohol and they drink it together, spending nice moments with each other. One morning, the prison warden summons Buemi to his office and offers him a project to make a new product of very high quality to give the prison a good reputation. The idea is to double production within 6 months, and in return he will get parole. We return to the prison and discover there is a place called the Death Row Block, where prisoners are tortured and executed at dawn, so that no one sees them. Although everyone hears terrifying screams coming from there, no one sees any. In that block there is a huge man named Cleaver, who has been awaiting execution for some time. Our protagonist had met him before during a workday, and knows that he is like a tamed beast under control, so he asks the warden to add him to his team to achieve the required goal. When the work team is complete, they are taken to the factory, where Beksiki hits one of them, who was joking around. That man is nicknamed the Needle. Later the same man starts causing problems with Buemi's best friend, so our hero decides to stand up to him to defend his friend. At that moment, the guards show up. One of them is a new guard, who kindly offers them chocolate to celebrate his newborn, but things go wrong because the Needle grabs the whole box and steals. After that, Beksiki explains to the new officer that he's dealing with thieves, murderers and child rapists, so he shouldn't spoil them with candies. He also tells him about a secret place for an important key as a security measure, along with some instructions so he can assert his authority. While they are talking, they discover that Cleaver isn't working like the rest of the team. Our hero goes to see what's wrong and finds out that something is stuck inside his machine. Everyone tries to find a solution but doesn't know what to do until Beksiki tells them to turn on the machine so that the animal inside gets minced and comes out. Of course no one likes the idea because it means they would be killing, so Beksiki decides to force the new guard to turn on the machine. Without hesitation, Cleaver grabs him by the neck and chokes him to stop him. As if that wasn't enough trouble, the Needle hits the warden on the head, and the rest of the prisoners lock the door. Buemi doesn't understand anything that's happening. After a while, we see that the officers have become official hostages, so they can ask for help from the authorities, making the situation even more tense. Beksiki tells them that once they are exposed, their punishment will be execution because of this mutiny, so another prisoner starts to panic. Thanks to that, our hero manages to stop the Needle and take control of the situation. He asks the guard to forget what happened, since they're both okay, and will return to work as usual, but Beksiki refuses to give them his word of honor, making them distrust him. Despite this, all the other prisoners seem to agree except Cleaver, who is still worried about the bird stuck in the machine, and wants to do anything to save it alive. Because of this, Buemi approaches him and tries to convince him, and they do their best to save the trapped animal, but to no avail. During the conversation, we see Beksiki provoking the big man because he can't understand how a criminal like him could care about an animal, after all he's done to humans. Because of this, the big man continues to threaten to kill the new guard. At this point, Beksiki starts to implicate Buemi, telling him that all of this was part of his plan and that's why he asked for these specific prisoners by name, so he could escape. Seeing all these complications, our hero decides to negotiate with the guard, and make sure that Cleaver will let his hostage live. At that moment, 2 other guards knock on the door because they can't get in. The Needle acts and hits Beksiki on the head until he passes out before he can speak, and the big man stops the hero from opening the door. Buemi approaches the door, and asks the people outside that he wants to speak to the warden, but the guards outside decide to ignore him and go get help. A few seconds later, Buemi's best friend decides to come out with his hands up, but suddenly the guard shoots him, and we see him fall to the ground dead. Minutes later, the warden arrives to understand the situation. The guard tells him he shot the man because he was trying to escape, and that he has no information about their negotiation demands. Then a colonel appears and scolds him because all this happened while he as the highest authority was on leave. Inside the factory, Buemi doesn't know how this situation will end, and tries to calm one of his colleagues. Together, they lift Bekisiki off the ground and give some water to the two hostages, talking about the soul of their friend who was killed. The only solution left for our hero is to surrender quietly, so he decides to open the door again, but Cleaver still refuses, and says if the bird loses even one feather, he will kill the new guard. That doesn't stop our hero from going ahead with what he's going to do. Suddenly the scene shifts somewhere else, and we see that the warden managed to get an hour to act his way, but after that hour, the colonel will take over. So he decides to talk to the prisoners through loudspeakers inside the factory, telling them they must release the hostages within 10 minutes to stay safe. Here we discover that our hero decided to obey Cleaver to protect the new guard. When Buemi hears this message, he decides to try to save the bird trapped in the machine during this time, even if it means dismantling the whole machine, though he doesn't know how. His plan is to get the bird out, and then surrender. Everyone agrees except the Needle, who becomes so violent that he tries to kill the hero. Fortunately, Cleaver appears and saves his life at the right moment. The huge man uses his strength to open the machine. After that, the new guard tells him to take care because their hands might be cut off if they make a wrong move. Through small holes, they can see the animal alive. At that moment, there is a conversation between them where Cleaver talks about a nightmare, or a bad memory, he used to have about being buried alive, and that's why he is determined to save the bird so it doesn't feel the same way he feels every night. Outside, the colonel reads the files of everyone involved in this kidnapping operation, and here we discover that Buemi sentenced to 26 years in prison for a murder case. He then returns to the warden, and makes it clear that he is ready to kill them all, because he knows the prisoners won't surrender. But the warden, as the highest authority in the city, sees negotiation as the best solution. We go back to the group, and see them all trying with all their might to open the machine, including the new guard, because he was threatened by the other. While the prisoners are working, they hear a new message from outside saying that the 10 minutes are up. This causes another fight among them, because Cleaver insists the bird is the way out, while the others see him as the problem. At this point, Buemi calls the warden to tell him about the trapped animal, and asks for another hour, and they reach a quick agreement. The problem is that Bekisiki screams, and says it's all lies and insists that all the prisoners just want to escape, which for Buemi ruins any small progress the warden was making. The warden threatens them with 10 days of solitary confinement if they don't surrender immediately, and our protagonist responds by saying he doesn't trust his intentions at all, because his friend was killed even though he was unconscious and had his hands raised. The only response from our protagonist is to ask for another hour to save the bird. The warden offers him that time in exchange for releasing the hostages, and gives him 5 minutes to decide. The problem is, he makes it clear that his parole depends on this decision. When the rest hear this, they start to get angry, because they think Buemi is negotiating for better benefits for himself and exploiting them. At this point he has no choice but to admit that all he was asked for was to increase production, and that there is no parole for them. Without hesitation, our protagonist decides to release Bekisiki, and Cleaver agrees because it's the best thing for the bird. At the same time, the colonel organizes his men to shoot at the prisoners. After a few minutes, we see the guard come out with his face covered in. Our protagonist promises that the other guard won't be harmed, and just before handing over the hostage, the colonel appears and shoots at him. Because of this, Buemi quickly goes back inside, using Bekisiki as a human shield. The warden goes crazy, and attacks the military officer, creating a new hostility between them. The prisoners continue their attempts to open the machine, unaware of what's happening outside. Military vehicles arrive with dozens of soldiers to confront. After a while, Buemi finally makes a hit, and manages to open a hole, and Cleaver uses his strength to widen it. There they hear the bird singing again after a long time. Our protagonist puts his hand in, and everyone talks about a fairy tale of a fisherman who freed a golden fish, hoping something like that will happen to them when they save the bird. Unfortunately, none of them can reach the bird to get it out. While they're trying, they talk about the wishes they'd like to make. Then the Needle takes a saw to make a decisive cut in the machine, even though it's dangerous. Suddenly, he confesses, and says he wishes he had another identity, because he doesn't like what he sees in the mirror every day. Here, Buemi admits that his greatest wish is freedom. Cleaver says he has no wishes, and that it's enough for him to save the bird, and let it fly. Then, our protagonist approaches Bekisiki to ask him for the locker key, but the latter tells him he can grant him his wish for free, even though he's badly injured. He tells him there's a safe upstairs full of weapons, and offers to give it to him in exchange for parole. He needs them before the intelligence team arrives, as they're planning to kill them all, including him. When he returns from the guard's office,
We see that our protagonist refused his offer and simply throws the keys in his face. When he returns to his colleague, he reflects on how something so small can change your whole life. Clever takes this moment to tell him about his hard life, including a suicide attempt years ago, brutally killing his brother, and his parents abandoning him because they blamed him for everything that happened. His sentence made him lose his sense of being human, and he wishes he could feel like a normal person again. As he tells all the details of his feelings, we see Buemi crying and hiding without his colleague, noticing his pain. Immediately, Clever asks him, "Do you also have a bird you care about?" Buemi says yes, but he can't see it, and tells him about his son who always sends him letters, but he never had the courage to reply. His colleague advises him to write to him for the first time, and tells him about what he just did when he refused Beksiki's offer. Outside, the soldiers gather again to deliver the final blow, with the intention of killing the prisoners. At the same time, the group uses a flamethrower with an oxygen cylinder to break the machine, and here Beksiki volunteers to do it, saying he knows the right angle so he won't hurt the bird. He's also badly injured, and tired of waiting. Quickly, the guard activates the device, and within minutes, he succeeds in his mission. Everyone is amazed and wants to help the bird, but at that moment, they hear a huge explosion. It was Beksiki, who took advantage of their distraction, to look for his weapon and take revenge for all the harm done to him. Without hesitation, he starts calling them one by one to sentence them to death. He asks for help from the new guard, but he can't control Clever, who runs at him and strangles him to death. As if that wasn't enough, the colonel gives the order to blow up the entrance to storm the factory. The explosion knocks the group of prisoners to the ground, and despite orders for them to stay down, we see Clever get up to free the bird they barely managed to save. Unfortunately, the guards finish him off even though he was completely unarmed, and he dies next to his colleague, watching the bird fly all over the factory. The rest are encouraged and get up to celebrate freedom. When the colonel gives the order to shoot them, we see that the rest of the soldiers refuse to do so. After a while, the warden enters the place and finds a bird's wing in the machine, confirming that everything was real. The new officer testifies in favor of the prisoners, who continue their sentence, but this time knowing for sure that Clever didn't die, he was freed. Because of this, they finally managed to feel a little more human, and that's the end of the movie. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all new updates. See you in the next video. Goodbye.